Mic trigger. Record. Mic trigger. Mic lock. Finish recording.
So I'm putting this on both channels, this video, because it's an educational one and it's to parents and children alike. This video is titled My Path, My Journey, Part 1. I'm just going to say now, disclaimer before I go into things. There is a lot of anger I have to people. And that anger will be coming out in this video. Because it has to be real. I was going to script this, but I thought, no, let's do it from the heart. It's the best place to do it from. So, when I had imaginary friends all the way from, it started when I was 3. 3 or 4 years old. And it stemmed from my sister had a friend and I wanted one. She had a real friend though. And I had nobody really. It's not that I didn't have nobody. People didn't really want to play with me. Because, I don't know, I wanted a lot of attention really. So I was getting to the age where, I wanted to go out and play with people and play house and that kind of stuff. And my sister had this other friend as well, called, I think her name was Joanne. And she came round, and there was one time she came round to our house and Jessica wasn't there. So I says, you don't have to go home. You know, you can, you can play, play here. And obviously there was another couple of kids. I think there was one girl that used to come around and used to play all the time. But I just remember this one time, this girl, Joanne, she came around and she was fantastic. I said to her, Mummy, I says, don't send her home. I says, she can play here and, I know you're Jessica's friend and everything, but you play here kind of thing. I'm not sure what those specific words were, but anyway, I said, don't go. So she stayed and had to keep me quiet. I think, did we play in the back garden? No, we played in the playroom upstairs. I can't remember what the heck we did, what games we played, but my sister don't know where she was, but anyway, so we'd been on the swing and everything, and we came back and it was brilliant, and then we had some people across the road who I actually saw last year, would you believe? But there was a girl called Anne Ball across the road, and she'd pop in now and then. And she'd appear from nowhere, as kids do. And I remember one day she came round And she'd spend a good, afternoon. So I'd go in the garden and she'd play with me in the toy car and everything. And then people just, I don't know, they just disappeared. So when you're alone in the back garden, your imaginary friends start to appear. And Gress was the first one and stuck with me for a good few years. There's Hutzer and Kienle. And we do things like play in my toy car and... Gress was the first one. And I said, he was like the first proper one. And we'd go on the swing and he said, see you later, Stephen. And he'd jump in his car and drive off. And one day, I was in the conservatory playing on the fruit machine and Gress was there. So it's all kind of stemmed from that, And then, so that's a bit of a back story. When I went to big school, which is far away, boarding schools are... I stayed there towards the end, but never for 4 nights. And I found it so difficult to socialise. When your friends all live really far away. You've got one friend who's in bloody Yorkshire, and one friend who's in Manchester, and another friend who's in... So you only ever really saw each other at school. Except for one kid who apparently his mum, he was a kid who I'd never really got on with because he used to grab and pull people's hair until the summer. We started being like great friends. Strange how that is. And so his mum brought him to our friend's house. They'd arranged, he came and saw me. So I did have friends that did used to come over because that's what happened, or we'll come back with you and all the rest of it. But I very rarely saw them. And we rang each other on the phone. Oh boy. The amount of phone calls we'd have. And then that was it. We stopped phoning each other. And I remember one time I rang his house and his mum said, could you not call anymore? Because Adam's going to Worcester, which I knew. And I was like, yeah. I'm not going to bother ringing anymore. So I stopped ringing him. And there was another friend who I had as well when I was 8 years old, but that's for another. I'm going to save that for part 2. So we're going to skip a bit. We'll go back in part 2 because part 2 is there's a bit more in part 2. So
5:12 p.m.
a few minutes and I'm gonna have a meeting. So what happened was I really struggled like making friends all the way through like school. And when I was 8 years old, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my parents got divorced. And, well, they split. They divorced a year after, but they split, right? Which is kind of crucial in the story. Now, it didn't mess me up. Because a lot of people think, oh, it didn't mess me up in the way that people think. I guess what messed me up was I never really got my own way of thinking. And so it was with my mum's side of the family was, this is the way we want you to do things. And my dad's side of the family was, this is the way you should think about things, kind of thing. I'm talking a mental image, if you know what I'm saying. You know, my mum's side of the family was, you know, this is right, this is what you need to do that's right, you know. This is what I do, this is how I do things. My nan, when she was alive, I think she wanted to suck out the imagination that was in me. Like, she didn't want to do it straight away. But yeah, it's just kind of the things that happen. Now, the imaginary friends didn't really get a problem till I was about 9 years old. When I was at my dad's house, we had this rule. My real dad's house, that is. We had a rule that if we were going out and I wanted to talk to my imaginary friends, I had to have a toy phone up to my ear. Now, that is a good rule, because if you're going to have your imaginary friends, if you're going to talk to your imaginary friends all the time, and you don't want them around, say, look, don't tell them to go home, but just say, look, text them or ring them on the phone, you know? Toy phones, and especially with AI, imaginary friends are going to be so easy to talk to because you can text them using artificial intelligence, chat GPT. You can set something up. I even got told off for doing that at one stage, but we'll get to that. So, and I had tape recorders as well, so I was always recording stuff. And anyway, it wasn't until later, because what happened was, when I was about the age of 9, and when I went to parties, I kind of, when I went to, like, Mummy's friend, when they had parties, there was always stuff to do. There was television games, there was all kinds of stuff. You know, people really interacted, so you were never really bored, kind of thing. But there were other people that had parties, and it was kind of, what do? You go in a room, what do you do? Well, your imaginary friends start coming out. And because it was the 90s, and there was only two things, normal and strange. I don't know about you, but I think now, looking back, I think there was the conformists and the non-conformists, right, of the time. Now, I was seen as weird because I would the only thing that I was interested in was computer games and Star Wars, watches, cars. So, because nobody would actually talk to me about that sort of stuff, when I did get to people that would talk to me about that kind of thing, that was it. They were in my world all of a sudden. Well, not really. So what happened at this party was these kids, who were being complete jerks, by the way, they kept going, "Oh, your friend's behind you. You know, your friend's behind you." So I thought, okay, I thought maybe someone wants to be my friend and they're behind me, but they weren't. And that really upset my dad's friend. So it was then like talking to yourself and having imaginary friends, that was seen as weird. Never understood through the whole, I mean, okay, I understand like talking to yourself, having no one there, that could be wrong. But having an imaginary friend, and yeah, I never really got the concept. I never really had it explained. And then I did learn, but the very difficult way. And people were saying, "No, it's an excuse. You know, you're making an excuse." I had like toy phones and cassette recorders confiscated because people were uncomfortable with it. You know, to be honest, to give someone a toy phone is probably a way to be comfortable with it, because if you give them a toy phone, you're encouraging them. It's not an excuse, but you're making things comfortable for you. You know, you have to think about it like this, right? If you're in a room with a smoker, not that it happens these days, because obviously where can you smoke? But if you're in a room with a smoker, what is the thing that you tell a smoker to do? Open a freaking window, right? So if someone's talking to themselves and it's making you uncomfortable, giving them a toy phone is it's exactly like telling a smoker to open the window. And that's for people who see things, you know, to see it as a habit, you know. You're giving them a toy phone. I would say don't give them a smartphone. But we'll come to that at the end of this part. I'm going to kind of give you little tools, parents, by the way. And obviously in my description, if you read my description, which I'm going to put a little comment as well, just in case YouTube makes this video for kids, I'm going to stick it in the description, but I'm also going to try and lead you to some great things, tools more or less. And it's great someone having experience that teaches. People who have experience are the best teachers, I say, because they know. And obviously I understand there's people with kids and they don't know what to do half the time. They're more or less in limbo. But, you know, it may not be an excuse. That's going to affect your child. You know, it's only an excuse if you're doing something deliberately. You know? But I don't know, it seemed like it was an excuse. I could never argue that because I was only a child back then. And it was a naughty thing to do. And so I didn't really wanted to I knew how to hide it for a while or suppress it, whatever you want. But it got so exhausting masking just for those people. And when I got to secondary school, by the end of year 7, I decided, that's it, I'm not going to mask. I've got an issue. And it wasn't until year 9 or 10 there was an issue. So we'll leave it at that for part 1. I'm going to tell you just a few things. Having imaginary friends aren't the problem. It's not an illness or anything. But if it is part of an illness, or if it does come with a learning difficulty or a disability, if you're finding certain things like kids talking to themselves, if you find that an issue, there's loads of things you can do, especially now. Now, the toy phone, I'm going to just say, don't give your kids a smartphone, because it's gonna kill their brain cells, as they say. It'll kill their imagination. Try and find a phone that doesn't really do much, because then they can come with all kinds of things. If you can't find a toy phone, sure, try and find an older phone that's got an MP3 player on so they can listen to their music on it. But make sure, cassette recorders are great, but I can see where that could be an excuse, because obviously... But then again, cassette recorders, not too much of a bad thing these days if you can get hold of them, because then, kids are learning a skill and, and everything and whatever, So make sure that, you show what the kid's doing. Obviously, if it's a radio show or whatever, I don't know. But the kids are learning how to expand their imagination. You can also get the toy rotary phone still, but if you want a cell phone, get like an older type. Don't get like a smartphone, because smartphones, they do so much. They do too much, and there isn't any sort of limitation. Unless they've already got a smartphone and there's nothing else that... Also, like I said about using ChatGPT, that's also great, because if you make sure the kids are like creating bots, and then it's like they're learning how to spell, they're learning how to speak with people, they're learning how to be polite with other people on the internet per se. They're learning about the outside world, which is very, very, very important and needs to be taught, I would say, in all walks of life. And then my last thing that I'm going to say in part 1 is, if you find things uncomfortable, make sure you give resources, and make sure you enter their world at times. Because if people are closed off in their own world, there's a reason. They really want to be in that world. They want, they don't want you to enter. So don't. But ask questions. If you're a parent who sits down at the dinner table, if you don't have a dinner table, that's fine. But make sure you turn the TV off. At meal times, turn the television off, and talk to your kids and listen. They may be telling you some amazing things that I never told my parents, but we'll be talking about that in part 2. I've left some things out because in part 2, the most emotional things are best left for part 2. But I've jumped straight to quite a few things. I've gone from sort of like 0 to 50, but we've got there at least. I kind of... The reason I left some stuff out in part 1 is because it's more relatable in part 2. So yeah.
One notification. Reminders. 1 hour ago. Mic trigger. Mic lock. Finish recording.